Thank you, Kate. I forgot. So last week we talked about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? What can be the benefits of mindfulness? How does it relate to how we think about the planet and climate change? So today we're going to dive more into the four foundations of mindfulness. So I'll start with a reminder of the definition of mindfulness. So mindfulness is being aware of the present moment with knowing and without judgment. So that knowing and that without judgment is what separates us from Archie, my dog. The four foundations of mindfulness, you can think of them as kind of like the building blocks of mindfulness. They're kind of like mindfulness 101, the four things to pay attention to. For those of you who like to understand the intellectual side of it, these are encapsulated in a discourse called the Satipatthana Sutta, which captures the Buddha's early teachings on Buddhism, on mindfulness. And it's a discourse because he taught via teaching, like orally speaking. He didn't write stuff down. He didn't write any books. And actually nothing was written down from what he spoke until like hundreds of years after he died. So that there's always questions about translation and interpretation and all of that stuff. So yeah, the four foundations of mindfulness are the building blocks of mindfulness, very basic, the four things to basically pay attention to. They're also known as like super advanced practice, like the direct path to realization. I think we talked about this last week too, realization of the causes of suffering and therefore what can release us from suffering. So these four foundations are mindfulness of body, which we'll talk more about today, mindfulness of feeling tone, and the Pali word, Pali being the language that the Buddha spoke and the people the Buddha spoke at that time, is Vedana, so feeling tone or Vedana, which is like not emotions, not feelings and like I feel angry. Feeling tone's like, what is the tone of the sensation I'm receiving from the world right now? Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And we'll talk about that more in our next session. So mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feeling tone, mindfulness of mind or thought. This is where we become aware of, oh, I'm thinking about this. My mind is feeling agitated, the quality of my mind. And then the fourth one is mindfulness of mental objects, also known as mindfulness of dhammas. Dhamma being the Sanskrit and Pali word for like things, like just stuff that happens in the world. And so I like to think of this fourth one as these are the patterns that we engage in our minds to string it all together. And to string it all together to create our reality, which then that string often either increases or decreases suffering. So it's kind of like our habits, our patterns, how we put all this stuff together, how we make sense of it all, which can then impact our level of suffering. So mindfulness of body is the first foundation of mindfulness. The Buddha didn't necessarily teach that they had to be linear, like they had to be studied linearly or they happened in a linear way. But he did say that the first foundation, mindfulness of body, is foundational. So he said, if the body is not cultivated, the mind cannot be cultivated, right? Like without actually cultivating an awareness and knowing of your body, forget about anything else. And so when you think about it, like a lot of our societal problems, possibly, my thesis, come from the fact that we don't actually live in our bodies most of the time. Most of the time, our minds are in the past or in the future, or treating our bodies in an extractive way, right? Like, okay, I have this mind, that's the boss, and I got to use this body in a way that's like, okay, push harder, drive harder. I need to take from this body. And so that extractive mindset starts at home, starts with ourselves. And so maybe it might make sense and how it's so easy for that extractive mindset then to expand to how we think of the planet and how we think of other people. So that's my thesis. Try it on, see what you think. Don't take anything that I'm saying for granted or truth or gospel or whatever. Don't take anything the Buddha said. That's what the Buddha said. Don't just take what I'm saying as like truth. Play with it. See what it feels like in your direct experience. And if it makes sense for you, great. If it doesn't, toss it. So mindfulness of body it is what it sounds like. So it's being mindful of the various parts of our body. The Buddha actually had a specific practice called the 32 parts of the body practice, which was like very literally like bringing awareness to things like skin, mucus, blood, hair, nails, liver. I'm not going to remember all the 32 parts right now. Bones, flesh. But there are practices that are like basically a body scan and just bringing attention to various parts of the body. It also incorporates the elements as part of the body. And that's the practice that we're going to do a little bit later today. So when you think about it, the body is how we connect with the earth, right? We don't necessarily connect with the earth through our mind or our thoughts. Our body is what physically touches the earth, but it's also what we share with the earth. This body was made up of the same elements that make up the earth. This body came from the earth and it will go back to the earth. It belongs to the earth. I like to think of it as my body is just on loan for the moment. Our body is also how we experience everything in our world, everything that we experience, from the most mundane thing to the most supernatural. Like I'm having a super spiritual experience right now. Well, that's happening through my body because I'm hearing certain things, I'm seeing certain things. My mind is a part of my body. Every single thing happens. And it's constantly flowing and changing. Like when I think about it, it is really amazing that this body knows how to digest food, how to sleep, how to heal itself, how to like all the things that need to happen in my body and brain for me to be able to use my eyes to see. Like there's constantly processes going on in this body that I don't have to do anything about. Like I don't have to be like, okay, I'm going to decide to start seeing right now and turn on a switch. It just happens. And so what's really cool about that is that that's not just the case for me. Like I'm not special. Of course, not everybody has the same abilities with their bodies, right? But the core function of being alive, think of like the heart beating. If you're alive or breathing, everyone has that capability without actually having to do anything to make it happen. So my body isn't really unique to me. It's not like Jennifer Wong's body. It's just this collection of elements undergoing a process or processes, plural. I have the same parts as other humans. Other people have blood, same as non-humans. I have the same raw materials as the earth. So I'm not unique. It's not like this concept of Jennifer isn't actually real. I'm just a collection of stuff with processes going on. And so if I think of it that way, I can start to switch my view from self-view to universal, right? Everything doesn't have to be so personal. I can think of it more as, well, I'm just part of this collection of masses here. This collection of masses here, and you are all collection of masses, and we're part of this universal collection of masses with processes going through them. So as I'm talking, you might start to see how this kind of puts us in relationship with Earth, right? And the elements around us. And maybe puts us in relationship with how we relate with other people on the Earth. So that's just something to chew on. So the Buddha taught that mindfulness of body helps us understand the causes of suffering, right? Like, this is why this is such a powerful tool. Like, the body can just be this amazing teacher. So Kate, you were talking about like last night, like binge watching the show and eating. It's like, okay, yeah, I know what that feels like. That feels like craving. I must have that thing. I must have that ice cream. I must have that plastic. I must have that new item of clothing, right? It's not necessarily an intentional, like, I think this is going to be what's best for me and my situation. It's a craving that's like a hook. It's got its hooks into me, and I've lost a little bit of my like intentionality, my agency. And so it's really easy when I'm out there in the world, especially like if I happen to go to somewhere that's like a shopping location, or watch someone who's online. It's really easy to see how it's so easy to get fed into this like vicious cycle of consumption and craving. Because guess what? When we satisfy a craving, the word satisfy is actually like not real, because if we actually fulfill a craving, usually what happens is it just leads to more craving. It doesn't actually stop the craving. And so it turns into the cycle. And if you think about it on like take food out of the equation, like how many people do you know who have said, I just need to move into a bigger apartment and then I'll be okay. Okay, they move into the bigger apartment and they're happy for like a year. Okay, this apartment is getting like really cluttered and I'm about to have a kid. I need to move into a house. Okay, I'm happy. I finally am in this house. Okay, it's getting cluttered again. It's feeling really claustrophobic in here. I'm working from home now. I need to move into a bigger house. Like that satisfaction from satisfying the craving lasts a short period of time, and then it ends. And so it just feeds itself. And so these body processes, this craving that we feel in our body helps us understand that cycle of craving. It also helps us to understand cycles of aversion, which is just the other side of the coin from craving. Instead of, I really want that, oh, keep that away from me. I cannot have that. Like, that's bad. You're bad, right? That turns into a vicious cycle as well. And then delusion in our bodies. Like, how many times have you been like, yeah, that thing in my knee kind of bothers me a little bit, but I don't want to deal with it right now. Let's just pretend it didn't happen. Or how many people, especially older people, I see this in my parents, are like, yeah, like I should probably eat better. I know I have like a heart thing, but what's this like extra glass of wine going to do right now? I don't really want to think about it too much. So that's delusion. And we see that expanded, especially in this world of looking at climate change, right? Like, how many people out there maybe intellectually understand it, but are really afraid to feel it in their bodies? How many people actually also intellectually just don't want to deal with it? They just are happy to stay ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant in a negative, like you're dumb way. I mean it as just like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know that much. I know that there's an issue out there. I just don't really want to know that much about it. So developing this mindfulness of body can help us see those like initial patterns of craving, aversion, and delusion, and start to notice when we're engaging in those, whether it's in our personal lives or in relation to like a broader societal issue or broader issue in our community. And so mindfulness can help us develop this awareness that is kind and caring and non-judgmental. That is really key, right? Like, developing an awareness of a societal issue that then is accompanied by more aversion doesn't really help. So it's that knowing and that non-judgmental part, which is like, well, I'm just made up of these like clumps of elements. With processes going through them. What right do I have to judge, right? Like, what perspective am I judging from? Because guess what? Like, I'm just this collection of stuff. I engage in processes that maybe are not that helpful as well. So yes, we can practice being kind. We can practice being non-judgmental. And we can practice just like being with what we notice without trying to change it or digging in. I feel like that's been super powerful for me on this path of creating some space between noticing and knowing, and then what I do with it, whether that's a judgment or a word or an action. And sometimes the thing that I'm noticing is the judgment. And so then there's space, hopefully, between the judgment and saying something about it or doing something about it. Mindfulness also has really helped me to have a direct experience of what we talked about last week, which was this interconnectedness with all other things and all other beings. And we'll do this practice in a second, which hopefully will help to feel it in our bodies. But often when we slow down and when we sit, and this is where meditation, like formal meditation, really comes in handy. When you decide, I'm going to sit and practice, and you do that for a while, my experience has been the body starts to feel less solid. I start to be like, oh, I'm just a part of this world. Not necessarily, oh, I am Jennifer, I am separate. Like, this is the skin, this is the head. It's just like, I'm just here. So before we jump into this meditation on the elements in the body, I just wanted to open it up for any initial questions. Okay. So if you're feeling ready, you can keep your camera on or you can turn it off, whatever is comfortable for you. Just find a comfortable position that allows you to be alert yet relaxed. I'm just taking a moment to feel your body in your chair or your seat, in this room, feeling the space around your body. And giving yourself permission just to be here for these next minutes as we practice, and not to try to get something done from your to-do list or try to observe, oh, what's this going to be like? We can be in this moment, in this body, just for this second. And then when the next second comes, we'll take care of that. So as you feel your body sitting on this earth, you can start to feel where the edges of your skin are. Where does your body end? Feeling the edges of your skin, feeling where the skin ends. And now as you sit, part of this earth, feeling the gravity binding you to this earth. The same gravity that binds you to all living beings. Feeling our land ancestors, the animals, the trees, the people who have stewarded this land for thousands of years. We all share these land ancestors. Now feeling the element of earth. This is solidity. It's your bones. It's any sense of tightness or looseness. So you can start with your head and feel that earth element in your head. Moving down to your torso. And if there's any area that feels like you don't want to go there right now, you can always shift your attention to somewhere that feels safe, like your hands or your feet, or maybe even the room around you. So you can be your own best guide here. Feeling the earth element in your abdomen and hip area. Feeling the earth element in your legs. Feeling the earth element in your feet. There's no difference between the earth element inside of us and the earth element outside of us, in the mountains, the stones, the ground. The earth keeps us alive by providing us with food. It is a part of us. Now, water element. This is the sense of liquidity, of flow. It's in our blood, our saliva, our tears, our mucus. So bringing your attention to the head and the water element in your head. Feeling the water element in your torso. Feeling the water element in your hip area. Water element in your legs. Water element in your feet. There's no difference between the water element inside of us and the water element outside of us, in the rain, in the oceans. Water provides drink for us. It is a part of us. Fire element. This is the element of temperature. Feeling the sun's impact. Any heat, any cold. The element of fire. Noticing this temperature, this fire in your head. Fire element in your torso. Fire element in your hip area. Fire element in your legs. Fire element in your feet. There's no difference between the fire element inside of us and the heat and the cold that's outside of us. This fire element provides warmth inside of our bodies. It is a part of us. Air element. This is space in the body and the motion of wind. Feeling the space element in your head. Space element in your torso. space element in your hip area. In your legs. In the air in your feet. There's no difference between the air inside of us and the air outside of us. This air provides us with our breath. It's the way that we exchange with the trees around us. These trees, this air, are a part of us. Now bringing your attention back to the full body as it sits, part of this world. And I'll share these words to end by Dr. Larry Ward. I ride the wind with the eagle and the hawk. I flow with the rivers into all oceans. I touch the sun and am touched by the moonlight like all beings. I am nature herself, awake, powerful, resilient, generative. Thank you for your practice. So we have some time now for discussion. I'd love to hear what came up for folks.